Many people have heard that Earth is a school. In this video, we're going to explore how Earth is not a classroom of punishment. Hello, beautiful sacred souls. This is a video script that I have written, but I hope you'll stay tuned. It is important information. My name is Allison Batty-Capps, author of The Divine Within, Healing Ourselves to Heal the World, and owner of Blossoming Heart Wellness, where I do personal mentorship. Today, we're exploring a concept many have heard, that Earth is a school and life lessons come through suffering. We'll examine this idea in a trauma-informed way and explore what growth truly looks like, and we'll take the shame and fear out of it. This channel explores healing, trauma recovery, spirituality, and consciousness through a trauma-informed lens that is also psychologically grounded. What I share comes from my own lived experience, my education, my healing journey, and my understanding of neuroscience, trauma, and spiritual integration. Nothing here is meant to be seen as absolute truth or dogma. It is merely meant to open the conversation and provide a different perspective. Nothing here is meant to diagnose, replace therapy, medical care, or most importantly, your own discernment. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. You are always the authority on your own experience. You may hear me use spiritual language, symbolic imagery, or speak about mystical experiences. Spiritual experiences may be meaningful and real, and they must be held with grounding, discernment, and nervous system safety. If anything you hear activates fear, urgency, grandiosity, or distress, that is a sign to pause, ground, and seek support. Not to push through. It is an indication that something in your unconscious is coming to the surface, most likely to be witnessed and healed. My intention is not to awaken, save, or heal anyone, but to share what has helped me reconnect with my body, my agency, and my humanity and my divinity, so you can decide for yourself what supports your own path. That said, something I say may support your awakening or your healing, and I am channeling healing energies, so you might also receive an activation in this message. Let's begin. So I think the metaphor, Earth is a school, is misunderstood, and let me explain why. So many spiritual traditions teach that life is a school and that suffering is a lesson. This implies that you must endure hardships in order to grow. It implies that everything happens for a reason, and in fact, many spiritual people say that. And there's also this belief system that your challenges are soul contracts. I'm not saying that this is wrong, but I want to view it in a more trauma-informed lens. So at first glance, this could feel or sound comforting. It gives life a sense of order and meaning. But from trauma-informed psychology and neuroscience, we actually see something very different happening. What we see instead is that trauma or suffering causes the brain and nervous system to go into feelings of overwhelm, not learning. Chronic fear, neglect, and abuse literally rewire the nervous system, causing survival patterns. It is true that growth and wisdom can emerge after safety and repair, but they do not come through harm itself. So the school of suffering idea, if taken literally, can unintentionally harm, especially for survivors of violence or neglect. So let's explore what true growth requires. True growth requires safety. The body and nervous system must feel secure enough to process experiences. So from a trauma-informed perspective, you can't spiritually grow unless you are in a safe environment. It also requires connection, supportive relationships that mirror empathy and responsive care. Agency, the ability to make choices and reclaim control of your life. Reflection and integration, witnessing, reparenting, and understanding the self. Notice that none of these require enduring harm. None of these require suffering. They are what's necessary for psychological and spiritual health. So instead, suffering that is unprocessed or imposed can teach resilience, compassion, and wisdom, but only after the trauma has been healed. And that requires somebody to be in a safe environment. I want to acknowledge that what we see in the world is a lot of unhealed trauma that is built into systems that do make it difficult for people to heal themselves. This isn't to shame anyone or to disregard that birth is a school and that maybe we've come to learn lessons. It is meant to express that this is difficult to do with the level of unhealed trauma that exists on the planet. So let's explore the role of nervous system safety. Neuroscience shows us that a nervous system in survival mode cannot integrate experiences. So you cannot gain psychological or spiritual insight if your nervous system is a constant survival mode. Safety and regulations are prerequisites for learning and growth. So practices like somatic therapy, grounding, meditation, and attachment repair do help nervous system to unlock learning without requiring additional trauma. This is why many spiritual teachers teach these types of practices, because they do help you move into a regulated nervous system and they do help you make sense of your experiences. I want to look at this idea that when we say Earth is a school, it is not a school of punishment. It is actually a school of safety-enabled growth. The lesson was never the harm. The lesson is what healing allows to emerge after. So let's take a more trauma-informed reframe of Earth as a school. I think a more accurate trauma-informed metaphor is Earth is a place where we encounter patterns of unhealed trauma, both personal and collective, and where we have an opportunity to interrupt cycles of harm. I think this reframing removes victim blaming. It protects the nervous system. It honors the very real human experience. And it encourages action towards healing. It allows us to witness suffering without normalizing it. Then we can recognize injustice, abuse, and oppression, and we can say, how can I help shift this? It allows us to hold space for hope and transformation and requires us to actively move towards changing systems. So how does healing create wisdom? Well, healing is where true growth occurs. Reparenting ourselves and reclaiming agency happens when we heal ourselves. This also helps us to learn boundaries and consent that we might have been taught to ignore in childhood because of trauma and violence. It also helps us transform shame into self-compassion. And ultimately, this helps us break cycles of intergenerational trauma. So when you heal, you begin to access wisdom, resilience, and empathy. The real lessons that spiritual traditions often try to convey. And this is a lesson for all of us. Healing ourselves is the foundation of a functional, conscious, compassionate life. And it does not require us to suffer more. This is how we heal the world, by healing ourselves. Thank you for being present. I want you to remember that this series that we're exploring, Earth as a School, is to explore healing, integration, and awakening in a trauma-informed, compassionate, and grounded lens, both psychologically and spiritually. Mystical experiences, symbolic dreams, and spiritual insights are deeply personal. They are best understood slowly, with grounding, and often with professional or community support. I do not believe that true spiritual growth disconnects us from reality. I believe it helps us inhabit reality more fully. I do not offer private spiritual guidance, diagnoses, or personal interpretations through comments or messages, nor do I engage in personal relationships through social media or email. If you are navigating intense emotional or psychological experiences, please seek trauma-informed professional care or trusted support. That said, I do offer mentorship through blossomingheartwellness.com, and I do have an online course on my website based on my book, The Divine Within, Healing Ourselves to Heal the World. Both the book and the course are a possible resource to support your healing journey. Thank you for being here, for honoring your nervous system, and for choosing a path rooted in compassion, discernment, and embodied truth. I invite you to take gentle care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video. Sending you love.